Which celebrity got cancelled and you genuinely felt bad for them? I don't know if he was cancelled, but Hollywood did Brendan Fraser dirty. Glad to see him working again. I hear Doom Patrol's good. Britney Spears when she shaved her head and all that. I'm no fan of hers, but she just seemed like someone who cracked under all the pressure, and Craig Ferguson did an absolutely amazing job talking about that and relating it to his own life. Major respect to him for that. Kind of long but worth watching point. She's been fighting her father's guardianship over her for essentially her whole adult life. Her money has never been here to control. Her entire public life hasn't really been her choice. Not that she's the most stable person in the world, but her outburst, as a way of harming her father's hold over her, made a lot of sense. She's been a legal prisoner for a long time. Although apparently that might be changing. He was put in charge of her and her money because she wasn't mentally well enough to be in charge of herself, and in a matter of months she was back to doing world tours that made him millions of dollars. If she's not well enough to be in charge of herself, she's not well enough for a grueling work life. It's super sketchy that the person in charge of her life should also get access to any money she makes. By the way guys, if you are enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It will help us out quite a bit, and if you don't enjoy the videos in the future anymore, you can always unsubscribe. Let's get back to the video. Howard Dean. He yelled in excitement at one of his political rallies in 2004. People thought he wasn't fit to be president because of it. Edit. Thank you for the awards, nice internet people. I think about this often. An excited whoop made you unfit and too unstable for the presidency in 2004. The world has progressed in a really bizarre way since then. An excited whoop specifically when he was up on stage at a campaign rally in front of a crowd cheering the hell out of him. It just happened to be picked up on a close range mic, which made it sound weirdly loud in the recording, but that's just the nature of the audio equipment. I truly believe that excited whoop is no less than any one of us would let rip if we found ourselves in front of a crowd that size, all waving signs with our name and cheering to our success. Kind of a unique case, but Laura Dern. When Laura Dern played Ellen's girlfriend on the episode where she came out, she was blacklisted by the industry for nearly a decade. And some people would harass her to the point she needed protection in public. She says her manager warned her she wouldn't get roles if she agreed to take the part on Ellen, but did so anyways. She went from Jurassic Park and being in demand to nobody giving her a call. Obviously she's recovered, but we lost a decade of great Laura Dern performances because of studios' perception that she was cancelled by public opinion for playing a gay role. Edit. Post getting attention, as Laura Dern should, so here's the story in her own words. I remember in the making of Jurassic Park book that came out about the same time as the movie, there's a segment in there where Laura Dern says she's retiring from acting after that movie. I never understood why, and years later we know it's not what actually happened, but this comment fills in some gaps for me. Thank you. Amanda Bynes. If you look into the reality of how creepy and awful Dan Schneider was, it all starts to make sense. Video about him, Amanda, and others. Amanda Bynes and all the child stars break my heart. They were so young when they came to stardom, not at all of their own accord, and just basically were cash cows. I'm never surprised when they are grown and exhibit unstable symptoms or disorderly conduct, because what else do they know? There should be a watchdog agency for abuse and or unhealthy environment for mental development for young actors and actresses in Hollywood, and keep managers, agents, producers, directors and other actors accountable. Every year we hear about these horrible things happening to these people and nothing seems to be done to prevent it and protect them before it's too late. Ashley Judd. Harvey Weinstein blacklisted her for years. She's an incredible actress, Mira Sorvino too. She went from one of the most in-demand actresses after winning her Oscar to being completely blacklisted because Weinstein was telling anyone who'd listen that she was a diva and impossible to work with. When Peter Jackson was still making Lotta through Miramax, Weinstein told him not to hire Judd or Sorvino, and Jackson believed him. Even when the movies eventually moved to New Line Cinema, he still believed what Weinstein had told him and wouldn't work with them. When Jackson remembered what Weinstein had told him about the two and apologized to them for it. I went to a luncheon where Mira Sorvino talked about her experiences with Weinstein. It was horribly tragic and disturbing. He destroyed her career and she very nearly avoided being raped by him. It was heartbreaking to hear. He is a monster and horrendous person. Jenna marvels she was just gone one day. I wonder what happened. Basically, people were angry at her old content that she made 10 years ago, and while she's already apologized for her actions and addressed how she now understands why it's inappropriate, she felt that her presence on it was causing more harm, and it was too much to keep rehashing the same issue. She still streams with Julian all the time. I miss Jenna. Grew up as she grew up, and her ability to mature and grow helped me do the same. Ingrid Bergman was unhappily married to a doctor, Peter Lindstrom, with whom she had one child, Bea. In the late 1940s she had an affair with Italian director Roberto Rossellini. When news of the affair broke, she lost all her contracts. Her husband took her daughter, and the scandal was so intense US senators gave speeches condemning her on the Senate floor. Because of the fallout, she wasn't allowed to see her daughter Bea for 7 years, and didn't make a Hollywood movie for 7 years as well. She returned in Anastasia. What's interesting about the strong negative reaction about Bergman's affair is that affairs were not uncommon amongst Hollywood stars and the other stars didn't have as much backlash as Bergman did. I think what contributed to the reaction was that it was in such stark contrast with her Hollywood image as this saintly pious woman. It also didn't help that she denied the affair until she birthed Rossellini's child, when it was becoming blatantly clear that they were romantically involved. On the other hand, I think Bergman was looking for new creative and professional challenges. Even without the backlash, she probably would still have taken a break from Hollywood to work with Rossellini. Can I add Shelley Duvall to the list? Was in a string of great Robert Altman films in the 1970s, and did her own string of cable shows in the 1980s. Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, Tall Tales and Legends, and Bedtime Stories. Also, she did a few musical albums, and even created some computer games in the 1990s, like A Bird's Life and A Dog's Life. There is way more to her than Wendy Torraine and The Shining. Now, she is completely forgotten, except when people call her crazy or something. She deserves way better in my opinion. How could you forget one of her most iconic roles as Olive Oyl in Popey? Yes, that also. I'm surprised that Duvall and Williams did not do more work together. Also, they should do a documentary about her. Her life is interesting enough to warrant one. I have heard that Williams was not a fan of that movie and quit before it was completely finished. Dave Coulier is actually the voice of Popey in that movie. Not too sure cancelled is the right word for them, but Lindsay Lohan. Phenomenal actress and started at a young age. Had really messed up parents, no guidance from anyone, and too much money. I remember that at one point when she posted on Instagram that people were being too hard on Weinstein when the allegations first broke. Not a great look, but what I found really significant was that Rose McGowan told people to leave her alone because being a child star messes people up. Rose hasn't hesitated to attack anyone else, not even friends she had for years. I honestly think she knows something through the Hollywood grapevine that happened to Lindsay. What else makes you publicly defend someone asking people to go easy on your rapist? Lindsay was essentially pimped out by her mom as a child. She's never not been surrounded by creeps and rapists like Weinstein. That'll definitely change your view of what's appropriate behavior and what's not. This is not an excuse for behavior and comments, but perhaps an explanation on why she might have said that. Can't believe nobody said this yet, but Star Wars fans shouldn't cancel to these poor actors, namely Jake Lloyd, Hayden Christensen, and Best, who played as Jar Jar, Daisy Ridley and Kelly Mary Tran. What they all did is only doing their own job, but hating them because they played their most hated characters, not by separating it as an actor and a character, is such a shame and sad. I feel bad for them. Edit. turns out they did mention them at the replies in one of the top comments from this post, which is about Hayden. I'm just saying this because I felt really bad for them. I also would like to add George Lucas too, even though he's not an actor despite being his small cameo on ROTS. Star Wars fans him by creating prequels, focusing on CGI and special edition of the original trilogy, instead of giving him another chance. So much he sold his company and Star Wars to Disney, and now they want him back. This fandom is one of the most toxic that ever existed on the planet Earth. Edit #2. John Boyega is also included here, as I remember a backlash by fans over him before. Like people that I've mentioned above, he too doesn't deserve to get hate by many. And Best almost threw himself off a bridge because of how much people hated Jar Jar. Broke my heart to read about it. He is a human, not a character. The original Jake from State Farm, he wasn't cancelled, he was an actual State Farm agent named Jake. He was replaced by an actor in order to expand the brand and expand the character speaking parts. He either got transferred or moved on from State Farm. Can't remember which. I remember when he got married a few years ago, we asked his grandmother if he was wearing khakis. They did incorporate them into the wedding. Point still works for State Farm. It was just supposed to be a random funny commercial. They didn't think it would blow up like it did. There was a rumor he was let go, but is just now in a different department. He also has a pair of autographed khakis on display at a local bar where he worked. Robbie from Cave Town, an old Tumblr post was brought up in which he said the word TR*NY, which is considered a slur. People accused him of being transphobic, and in order to prove that he wasn't transphobic, he was forced to out himself as being transgender. Now, I don't know if you know this, but being forced to out yourself is terrifying and damaging, especially when you don't want to, and especially when it happens publicly, because that's exposing a part of your identity that you've kept hidden, because it is both exceedingly personal and also has a lot of ramifications depending on your environment. And, since this was Twitter, a lot of people accused Robbie of pretending to be transgender just so he could get away with it, or whatever dumb ideas were rattling around in their skulls. I was forced to out myself to my mom when she found me saying stuff online about being gay. And she asked me if what I said was true. I didn't know how I could possibly dispute the fact that I outright said, in a non-joking manner, that I'm gay, so saying no was basically not even an option. So, 12-year-old me opted for the next best thing and broke down into tears. Now, my mom is very supportive. She's completely fine with me being a lesbian. She buys me pride-related things. And I know that she doesn't care about who I love, because she loves me regardless. She definitely didn't mean to corner me the way she did. We were already having a pretty heated discussion at the time, because I was doing a lot of inappropriate things on my phone and the topic just ended up transitioning to that. But my point is, what if the circumstances were different? Because I know that I'm incredibly lucky, but that's because I was outing myself to one supportive figure in my life, and not outing myself to thousands of unsupportive strangers online who would berate me afterward and say I was lying. All the other members in the UK boy band Blue, they had a string of hits and were at the top of their fame in the UK. They flew out to the USA to start a tour and try to get known there. This was in September of 2001. They went and did a bunch of radio interviews during the weeks after the Trade Center attacks. Naturally, they kept getting the same question about what they thought of the atrocities. One of the members, Lee, got fed up and, quite seriously, said something about New York when whales are being killed every day. The whole New York thing is being blown out of all proportion. Cancelled their US chances almost overnight and caused a huge media backlash that basically ended the band. That's the first I've ever heard of that. Damn. I wondered what happened to them. They never made it big in America, but had some success in the UK early 2000s, and reformed in 2011 to limited success. Source: my friend is a fan. I had no idea about the 9/11 comments that did. Lee Ryan is a tosser. Jenna Marbles. I did not watch her content like a lot of people I know did, but the fact that she got cancelled for something she said 10 years ago is sad and just unfair. I said a lot of stupid things like 3 years ago. Are people going to use that against me? The very slim possibility I get famous for something. Cancel culture is legit scary, which is why it's so important to teach kids the importance of anonymity on the internet. I may not have said anything particularly cringy in the past, but even so I don't want people pulling up old forum posts where I'm geeking out about something that current me thinks is dumb. It's embarrassing. I've been like 3 separate people since then. Kids need to be dumb kids anonymously, and then when they hit adulthood they can start attaching their name. And even then, be careful what you put out. There's probably a reason most of us are having these conversations here on Reddit with strangers and not with friends/family. Janet Jackson 100%. She went from being one of the biggest stars in the music world to a complete pariah basically overnight. I've had people tell me, well, her career was already over before the Super Bowl, which is 100% not true. The last album she released before that, All For You in 2001, produced 2-1s and another song that peaked at #3, sold 7 million copies, and won her a Grammy. The album she released immediately after the SB, Damn It Joe, produced no top 40 hits and didn't even sell 1 million copies. So yes, the SB totally ended her career. People leave her out of the talks of biggest pop icon of the 90s, which is a tragedy. She was the #selling solo artist of the 90s behind Mariah Carey and had 18 straight top 10 hits between 1989 and 1998. And more importantly, she was a widely acclaimed visionary artist. The Velvet Rope is thematically similar to Beyoncé's self-titled album and was released nearly 20 years prior. Her videos, especially Rhythm Nation, were extremely influential on later pop and R&B artists, particularly Britney Spears and Rihanna. It's really sad that she was shunned for so long. Very recently she's gotten accolades for her work, but the damage to her career was done. Meghan Markle. I say this as someone who disagrees with the concept of the royals altogether and don't have any affinity for any of them, including Meghan. However, it felt that from the jump the royals and the media were undermining her, critiquing her, and were determined to dislike her. There was a sense of "Kate could handle the abuse, Diana could too, why can't you?" As if it is a sign of character to tolerate that. She had over a decade and life experience on both those women in stepping into the limelight, and she rightfully said "I'm not putting up with it," and it's seen as "ungrateful," and as a weakness. I always felt the royals were terrified that she could pull a Diana and eclipse them. She was beautiful and from a more relatable background than the rest of them, marrying the "fun" prince. I thought the fact she had a regular life including family issues would endear her to the public, but she was torn apart for it. I was genuinely shocked at how every positive thing she tried to do got mocked, with the implication always being "know your place, don't try shine too much." I have a suspicion that, if she didn't do anything, she'd have been accused of living like "Lady Muck" and being lazy. Everyone watching The Crown this season is up in arms at how the royals never protected Diana, but don't see the connection with how Meghan is treated. I'm glad Harry stood up for her. I hate that the media kind of imply he is pussy whipped and has been taken as a fool by Meghan for going to great lengths to protect her. I don't know how "cancelled" they are, but public opinion seems pretty against them. Liam Neeson. The man isn't just an incredible actor, he's an amazing human being who gives selflessly and asks for nothing. But because he admitted to having a racially violent thought way back when he was much younger and much more naive, or thought he literally said he was ashamed he'd ever had in the first place, interviewing him twisted the narrative to make Liam look like a racist, just to make a name for himself. I don't think he's cancelled per se. I still watch his movies. I'm a person of color and understand his perspective. Dude is old too. Like he lived in a different time period, and as times changed he realized he was in the wrong. I respect that more than people who are still stuck and he passed. Chris Hardwick didn't deserve to have false accusations from his crazy ex ruin parts of his career. Luckily it didn't blow up too much, and he was able to stay in Hollywood. That was the first person I thought of. I'm not even a huge fan of his, but unlike a lot of the other mentions here, this really was an actual case of attempted cancelling. And in such a scummy way. He had other exes backing him up, and leaked text conversations over when the breakup happened come about as close as you can get to showing he was being pretty reasonable / that the allegations were false, but the damage was done. They had already scrubbed his name from Nerdist site and he already lost his jobs. He could get hired back and move on, but yikes. And she just gets to do all of that because she was mad at him and she felt like it. And have plausible deniability because she never said his name in the article she wrote. She could only have been talking about him. Once it was being investigated and it was clear she was lying, all of a sudden she wants nothing to do with it, won't cooperate, just says oops, didn't mean to hurt anyone's career, I'm not going to say anything else about this. Just pulls the ripcord and pretends like she never did anything. It's such a frustrating situation. Norm Macdonald. Not too long after Louis C.K. and Roisin got caught up in their respective controversies, Norm was promoting his new Netflix show. Some greasy reporter interviewed him, and in that exchange, Norm said he'd reached out to his two close friends, Louis and Roisin, because he felt bad for what they were going through. Not that he condoned what they did, but that as a friend he was concerned about their well-being in the midst of their downfall. The reporter twisted the context and made Norm out to be a racist / pervert sympathizer. Every trash media outlet presented it like that, and in the Weinstein frenzy he became a pariah. His appearance in Jimmy Fallon was even cancelled because one of the staff writers was in tears about Norm even entering the studio. The rest of his promo tour for the show was spent apologizing and added fuel to the fire. He's a friend of The View and the ladies there let him contextualize it there, but the damage was done. His Netflix show bombed, probably because of all the bad press. Terrible thing to happen to a guy who just had a heart and cared about his friends. Louis the 100th point K. I know. I only feel half bad about it. First, doing what he did, even over the phone, to someone involved in his FX show totally should have cost him his FX deal, and other studios are right to not do business with a person who mistreats / abuses their staff and co-workers. But people didn't care about that nearly as much as the two adult women he invited to his room and asked to masturbate in front of. This was before he was even really famous. He wasn't their superior, they never lost their agency in the matter, and let's be honest, if he'd just had sex with them people would not have had an issue with it. It's because of a general stigma around sexual fetishes, and also Harvey Weinstein, that Louis got hit so hard. That said, he's touring and will sell of it. I don't so much feel sorry for him, as I just hated that a particular incident was wrongly used to convict him in the court of public opinion. Sinead O'Connor, she outed the pedophilia going on in churches. She was cancelled because she was saying this at a time when pedophilia was not as commonly understood as it is now, and as a woman who willingly had a shaved head and an alt appearance, and against a church that had a country wrapped around its finger for years. She basically started a avalanche effect of investigation into the Irish Catholic Church, and they discovered that yes, actually there was a huge problem of priests abusing children. There was also a huge issues of the Vatican knowing of these abuses and removing a priest from one area where he abused and placing him another parish far away where no one would know, instead of dealing with the problem. Also, these investigations and inquiries led on to other investigations, like the 800 dead mother and baby convent-run homes in the West. It was frowned upon for women or girls in recent years, like the 60s 80s, to be pregnant without a husband. So the women would be sent to one of these homes if that happened. And they'd stay there to have the baby. While there, the nuns would subject them to abuse, restrict personal freedoms and treat them like scum. When the babies were born, the nuns would just kill them. When the investigations were taking place, the authorities for 800 baby skeletons in one of these convents. So Sinead O'Connor got blasted for that, and now she's still seen in Ireland as a sad cocky woman who's lost her mind and just gets high in her bray house. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys for staying with me till the end. If you enjoyed watching this, you might as well watch these too.